Hello, AP Human Geography classes. Here's our next unit, services. And what we're going to focus on is really backgrounds of businesses and economics of, let's say, different countries. All right, let's first start here. Where did services originate? Well, before we talk about where services originate, we have to talk about the three different types of services. So service in general, right, tertiary jobs generate more than 66% or 2/3 of GDP in MDCs, and unfortunately less than 50% in LDCs, and we've talked about that before. There are three types of services. There's consumer services, there's business services, and there's public services. Let's talk about all three of those. All right, let's first start with consumer services. Something called business to consumer or B2C services. This accounts for 44% of all jobs in the United States, which are consumer-based services. Now, there are four types of consumer services that can be broken down in the following categories. We have retail and wholesale services, right? Kind of like department store employees, grocery stores, motor vehicle sales. And then we have education, like teachers, tutors, professors. We have health, which includes hospitals, doctors' offices, and nursing homes. And then we have our last consumer service, leisure and hospitality, which include restaurants, bars, lodging, and entertainment. So for a business to consumer service, they must fall under one of those four categories. All right, business services, also called business to business or B2B service. So 24% of all jobs in the United States are business-based services. Now, there are three main types of business services. One is financial, which is often dubbed FIRE jobs, not because they're hot, but because it is an acronym for finance, insurance, and real estate, which also includes banking jobs. Another type of business service is professional, which can include law, management, engineering, secretarial, etc. It's all there. And then last but not least, another type of business service is transportation or information services, which can include trucking, utilities such as water and gas, and publishing and broadcasting. Our last service here, public service, which basically provides security and protection for citizens and business. This accounts for only 17% of all U.S. jobs in this sector. Now, do note this excludes public school teachers because, again, they were accounted for under the education section in consumer service. Now, the main type of job under public service are really government jobs, whether it be federal, state, local, and some examples could be political office, candidates, homeland security, and military personnel. Okay, let's get into now where did services originate in early settlement? Well, there was a period of time where people transitioned from being nomadic to maintaining permanent residencies in certain places, and that was around 5,000 years ago. Now, early consumer service, we can see that shows the rise of specialization past agriculture, which means that everybody used to farm, and what started to happen is people needed other things. So now all of a sudden, people started providing specialized services for these other items, such as, let's say, for example, places to bury the dead. Women also played an intricate role. They made pots, tools, weapons, clothing. They even educated the children. And then men, if they weren't farming, gathered materials from them to make these goods. So we see now the rise in specialization in consumer services. Also, public services, which basically revolved around religious activity. Also, defenders, right? People who defended a certain area, manned fortified stations to protect against invaders and attackers. And the bartering of goods between farmers and hunters, let's say at the market. All right, so let's take some examples from four hearths of urban settlement. Let's kind of show the different types of services, all right? They displayed a variety of services throughout time. Let's start in Mesopotamia, the first city-states around 3000 BC. Now, houses were arranged in a distinct pattern around a courtyard, all right? And palaces, temples, and other public buildings were placed in the center of town, hence public services in the center. Cemeteries were placed beyond the walls of the city, hence specialization. All right, let's move on to ancient Athens here, right? These are the Greek city-states, which are found near the sea, and that purpose was for trade. Government, military, and public services in ancient Athens are actually surrounding the city. They're not in the center of the city. All right, move on in ancient Rome now. Construction of roadways and aqueducts, they were very important for transportation, for trade, utility services, and now you kind of see some consumer, business, and public services within that example. Roman legions, again, public service, were founded throughout the entire empire, and the public services, such as government, was centralized in Rome within the empire and really nowhere else. All right, moving on to our last hearth, European medieval cities, which are basically scattered throughout Europe. They used something called a feudal lord system, where cities were established to provide food, housing, and services for military personnel in exchange for protection. Again, specialization, as well as public service and consumer service. You see all of these three in that example. Now, large markets were also established in important cities throughout Europe. Again, trade, bartering. And the tallest and most elaborate structures were churches and other public service buildings, hence a priority on these two services. All right, right, that was a very quick rundown. All right, we're going to talk much more about services and where they originated in class. I will see you then.